We learn how to maximize the virtual space. It shouldn't replace the actual human connection.
What would it look like if this was easy?
To be in relationship with their money. Respect money as a really important player.
Power comes from feeling that your mission is important. It doesn't matter if you're aggressive.
I think we're in a culture of just be grateful. Okay, and am I a monster? Can I be grateful and still want more? And I think you can.
Mistakes are like treasures to prepare you for something else.
Welcome back to Powered by AWE. I'm Michelle Toner, your host, and today we're in episode 2, the messy middle no one talks about. Because there's a version of building a business that nobody puts on a highlight reel. The part after the wins, where the momentum dips, the decisions pile up, and you're not sure if what you built is still going to hold. My guest today knows that stretch intimately. She co-founded one of Canada's most beloved ethical fashion brands from Edmonton, scaled it coast to coast, navigated a pandemic mid-growth, and has never once pretended it was easy. Kendall Barber, welcome to Powered by AWE.
Really excited to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited as well to be here. Huge fan of Poppy Barley. Poppy Barley has a beautiful origin story about a boot shop in Bali. Can you give us a little bit of insight to where your business began?
So our business started with my sister, Justine. She went to Bali, and while she was there, she walked into a shoe store. She went to try on a pair of boots, and she couldn't quite zip them up her calves. And the man whipped out a measuring tape and said, "No problem. I'll measure your feet and legs and make the boots to fit you and ship them to you in Canada, like back home in Canada." And for her, it was really this moment of, why don't we make shoes this way? Why don't we take into consideration multiple measurements? So based on that experience, she was really fired up by the idea, returned to Edmonton, told me about it, and onboarded me to help exploring whether there was a business idea there.
And what was going on in your lives at that time? Was she just overseas traveling and it was a spark? What were you doing in your career? What was happening for the both of you at the time when this idea kind of surfaced?
So for Justine, she was working for the city of Edmonton and had been really committed to projects such as the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and always thought that she would work essentially in projects to better the world. And so for me at that point, I was working at Alberta Motor Association in marketing. So always had been a marketer. We were both, with our partners, but not married, fairly late 20s. Everything was kind of like easy and fun and free.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of like what we were doing. Having said that, I think that Justine was really ready to do her own thing. She was inspired that business could be a platform for good, and started to change her lens on how she viewed, the work that perhaps government or NGOs were doing and what the role of business could be. And for me, I always knew I wanted my own business. So from probably the early age of 10, it was just about finding the idea and what it was going to be. My dad worked for the railway growing up, and we moved a lot. And we moved without notice and quickly, and I think that I always craved more control over being able to chart my own path, and saw that through owning my own business.
Interesting. So this desire to make an impact, the ability to, flex and respond quickly, do you think that's led to your B Corp value right from the very beginning, or was that something that came later on in the business?
So Poppy Barley became a B Corp in 2019.
Okay.
So it's been about 7 years. And in 2019, we were one of 230 B Corps in Canada. So we were very early to the B Corp certification, but we've always led with our values. That was always very important to us. It's never been about making product at the lowest possible cost. It's always been about better materials, close working relationships with the factories, really thinking about who's making the product, who's wearing the product, and all of the inputs that go into that product. In the early days, that was really hard because you are already begging people to work with you, and then you come in with this extra list of demands that you want to fit your values. So it's always been kind of this, pulling and tugging in the business, even as we've grown, is the values with the profitability piece.
Do you think that's always the way for entrepreneurs, or do you think sometimes that I guess, values alignment comes with maturity? Do you think it normally comes first or it comes after? And I guess the reason I ask that is because of that push and pull. When you are new to entrepreneurship, the difficulties of having the confidence to say, no, this, if we're going to do this, this is how we're doing it. Was that a difficult decision for you at any point, or you knew that this was always the way you were going to go? Like, you wanted to make that impact?
So formalizing our values and formalizing our vision came later, but always from the beginning. The thing with entrepreneurship is it is you and your integrity. And that holds from day one. So even though I probably 14 years ago wouldn't say our values are this, and we're making this decision because of our values, we were making decisions of the values that we had as children growing up and the integrity that we held. And I think that that's a place that we actually had an advantage being sisters because our values were very similar.
And so maybe not formalized or written on paper, but there was just that understanding between two individuals who had the same values that, no, we don't do it like this. We do it like this, which I guess would be a really interesting dynamic and set a different stage versus if you had a business partner that wasn't raised in the same way, almost the unspoken that can happen between two people.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's the advantage of being, again, with your sister as your foundation is the same. And so how you approach things, whether it's the work ethic or how you problem solve or the shared experience of moving all over Western Canada together and constantly being in new, unfamiliar situations where we had to get through it together. We'd been doing that our whole lives. So then to do that in a business scenario felt comfortable in an odd way, or at least felt like it was something that we had deep experience doing together.
Wonderful. So you started as e-commerce only, set up on a table, people will come and see the boots, which is a long way from your now 4 retail stores. Beautiful store that I've been able to visit too in Southgate. What did those scrappy early days teach you about growth?
Yeah, so in the beginning, the plan was to be pure play e-commerce. The dream was that we would just go to sleep at night, and while we were sleeping, thousands of orders for our product would come in, and then in the morning we would send them to the factory and ship them out. And very early on, people were messaging us saying, where can we see your product? We want to, experience it. So yes, we started hosting pop-up shops that eventually led to a small showroom in one of our offices, and then that grew into retail stores. So I think in the beginning, there's this part of us that we're just so wildly optimistic. I miss that part. I think that's the best part of starting. It's just that nothing's beat you down yet, right?
Nothing's beyond the realm of
our
possibility.
projections, the most rosy, most beautiful growth stick projections you could have, and you truly believed it. And that's what powered us through those early days. Yeah, so it's been, I think in the beginning, while there's a lot of pressure, there's great excitement and an incredible amount of optimism.
Your customers were essentially craving the experience that your sister had in Bali. They wanted to come in and be measured and have that experience. Would that be accurate?
Yes, essentially that. And I think that women in particular, we don't buy a lot of things that we don't get to touch and feel. For example, we're no longer in men's, but we were briefly in men's. And men understand, they shop for suits like that all the time.
Right.
So they're used to being measured, not knowing what it's going to look like or fit like until they receive the product. And for women, it was very new.
See how, too, I think there would be some hesitation in confidence, too, for women to a certain extent. Being measured is a very personal experience. So, but wonderful that they craved that experience and that it has continued on. Is that still the experience? Are people still being measured specifically for shoes?
So we actually don't offer it at all.
Oh, okay.
So we started that way. Custom boots was our whole pitch. Men have different size legs, feet. We measure you. We get a perfect fitting shoe for you. And it was actually one of the most difficult decisions that we made in the business was to move away from that. So it started very innocently. We had this challenge that we were predominantly a boot company. So we were very seasonal. Our products, we really sold products from September to maybe the end of January, and then it was quiet. And in an effort to keep our factory busy and our shoemakers employed, we decided to pre-make our most common combinations of measurements during the summer. And then when we had those on the shelf next to the custom offering, people wanted the on-the-shelf product.
Right.
And that slowly started to take over from our custom business. Also, the custom business is like very disruptive on the factory floor. And it also left us with a product that if it was returned, what do we do with it? And so we stayed in the custom business for the first 7 or 8 years before we had the courage to go, we need to move on from the offering that started the whole company.
And actually, that was going to be my question. What was the, one of the single riskiest decisions that you had to make? Did it feel risky at the time to say, this was our foundation, but we're going to move away from it?
Yes, it was very risky. It felt risky because we knew that there was a fraction of our customer base that's why they shopped with us. And it was like our identity. It was who we were. And so I think we held on to it a couple years longer than we should have for the financial impact that it was having on the business, but all of the complications on the operations side. We likely should have made that decision earlier, but I think because it was so tied into who we were, it just took us longer to get there and go, okay, we can use all these measurements. We have thousands of measurements from women to make a better fitting shoe. And we can offer that shoe or boot in multiple sizes. So even now for our flats, we do sizes 5 to 12 in both a medium width and a wide width. And with our calf boots, like tall boots, we offer 3 calf widths. And we know that if you need calf size 3, this is what the ankle measurement should be. This is what the foot measurement should be. So we did take all that knowledge and move it into our current product offering. So it's not lost, but we don't have this custom experience anymore.
In my conversations with entrepreneurs, a theme that has been emerging very much so is the difficulty in walking away from something that you have so proudly proclaimed. And so I would imagine that was the same scenario for you, that it was custom and everything was measured, and then you're like, isn't that who we are? But the success that comes out of making that difficult decision and then allowing your business to grow because you made a difficult decision. And it seems to be a common thread that there's this tipping point where you could do it or you couldn't, but generally when the hard decision is made and you walk away from something that had been part of who you were, that your business really just kind of skyrockets. And would you say that has been your experience then, that the business, you have 200% growth year over year in sales? Was that because you were able to serve a larger market and provide the product at a quicker time, I guess?
Yes. So making the decision to move away from custom was one of the critical inflection points in terms of our growth. It allowed us to reach more people, have more product, be more design forward with our product offering because we didn't have to consider all the different measurements being applied to it. Yes, like if you look back and if you correlated, like this is when we stopped offering that and like this is when we started growing, they're very, very much aligned.
And it's funny, my other question was going to be, was there something that you avoided doing and what it cost you? But like you said, you almost wish you had done it a couple of years earlier, but we're here now.
Yeah.
And when did you expand the product line from shoes to bags?
I believe we did our first bag in 2015. It was called the Perfect Handbag. We brought in 25 units and sold out within a couple of days. And I was out having lunch with one of our female investors actually, and she said, "What's the easiest thing you do in your business?" And I said, "Well, we just made this bag. Like there's no sizes. It fits everyone, and we've had 0 returns compared to footwear." And she just said, "Why don't you do more of that?" And it was such that ding, but why don't you do more of that? And that's been one of our the best lessons that I've had. And I say that to our team all the time. What would it look like if this was easy? What's the easiest thing? What's working well? Let's do more of that. Because I think we're so wired, or maybe I'm so wired to look at the things that aren't working and go, if we worked a little bit harder, if we tried something new, or what if we did this? Trying to fix what's not working instead of doubling down on what is working.
Absolutely.
And so that was a really big shift for us. And now bags are a really core component of our product offering.
I think that we are hardwired to fix what doesn't work. And psychologically speaking, if you think about how they train animals in the zoo, they reward them for good behavior. They don't punish them for bad behavior. So doing more of the good, and it seems like such a simple piece of advice. Do more of what is easy as opposed to slogging through the difficult. Nice that you were able to get that piece of advice from an investor. Oftentimes we're asking people, what's a piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier on in your journey? I think that one would be a definite bonus for a lot of entrepreneurs. Do more of what's easy as opposed to really trying to push through. Tired is not necessarily, the best measure by which to see if you're actually succeeding or not. So there's a version of you that launched the lean e-commerce brand. I'm sure there's a very different version of you co-leading a multi-city retail operation, B Corp certified, and an international supply chain, which I'm sure was very difficult during COVID. How has your identity as a leader had to shift to keep up with the evolution of the business?
One of the hardest things of being an entrepreneur is that you are both trying to grow yourself as you grow your business. And I think back to who I was when I started, and like I said, that optimism, I miss that, right? Because as you go through more things, you become quite hardened because you have to. Things that used to keep me up at night wouldn't even
not a blip on the radar.
Yeah, I wouldn't even pay attention to it anymore. I'd be like, oh, that's interesting, and onwards with my day. But as you grow, your problems become so much bigger. The scale of it, it's not like a $10,000 problem. It's a $4 million problem. And it keeps going and going and going. So through that, you learn, I've learned really good tools to go to sleep at night. I have a very dedicated bedtime routine, how I need to take care of myself, whether it's, from a fitness, time with my family, time with my friends. You build all these systems around you, but then you're also living in a very systemized world. You're not just oh yeah, let's work till 11 p.m. and go for drinks after and wake up and do it all again in the morning, because you reach a point. We were about 2 years in, and I remember Justine saying to me, if we keep going at this pace, we are going to be divorced with no friends and no hobbies. And is that what we want? Is it at that cost that we build this business? And so then what we started to do is integrate into our planning, life planning. Right. So now we sit down and go, okay, this is what I want from my life. And this is what I want from Poppy Barley. And these two things need to work together.
As a female entrepreneur, do you think there was that extra pressure of what you should be doing in terms of late nights, early mornings, having drinks, being everywhere, running yourself ragged, essentially, that it took a minute to say, this isn't how I want to live, and this isn't how it needs to happen?
I honestly think those early years were nothing compared to having babies and trying to run a business.
Yeah.
At least that was you were making your choices. It was this is fun. I love working on this. We're going to go out. And then I think when we started to go, okay, now we want to start to have families, and daycare closes at 5:30. And if I'm not there at 5:30, I'm getting fined every 5 minutes. It was really having kids, I think that was that big shift that made us go, okay, we need to change how we're doing things. And also we wanted to be with our families.
Right.
That's also where our hearts went.
What was the biggest shift? What were some of the things that you changed once the kids came? Because I think anyone who has children understands you don't get to dictate the schedule as much as you would like once they come along with their own little agendas to not sleep or to be teething before a meeting or all of those things. How did you handle that unpredictability, I guess, of having children but having a very demanding schedule?
I think quite horribly.
Okay.
If I'm being,
Fair.
I think that Justine and I would both say that that first year of each baby that we had were some of the hardest, because we each took about 3 months off, with the exception of when I had my son. I had him in February of 2020. So then I was back March of 2020, closing all our stores, letting go of all of our teams with a 6-week-old. So I think that those first year having babies was the hardest. And we were angry for, at times, I have no idea what it's like to go to a mom's group.
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard.
So, but now it provides us untold flexibility. So I pick up my kids every day from school, and I'm not asking my boss to go do that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that we paid for it. It was very challenging in the first year and so much better in every year since then for what it allows us to do.
I have 2 children as well, and they were born very close together. And in the beginning, I really struggled with losing the career piece of being mom, but also wanting so much that ability to be the mom on the floor doing the things. And it's a battle either way. It's a battle when you get to do the things, and then when you don't get to do the things. And I call it the fog. I felt like I was in a fog for years, trying to work, trying to have babies, and making those decisions of, okay, am I going to be at home to put my kids to bed, or am I staying at the meeting? And a different scenario when you're working for someone else versus, running your own business, because essentially the buck stops with you. And, you are paying, you have the responsibility of paying other people's salaries and other people. And I'm sure that was very heavy, especially during COVID. Hormones, of having a new baby, just the crazy impact all of that had. And I can tell it still probably sits with you, but yeah.
I mean, I guess the good thing was that my husband's business was also closed, so he was at home. So, I mean, he spent a lot of time with the kids as babies, which I did really appreciate in our partnership and marriage, that he experienced it as well.
And I think that's a very unique experience for mothers who are entrepreneurs. And I don't know that the same feelings would come from a father who is an entrepreneur about that missing the mom group, or not being able to do, book babies or go to swim lessons. I have been there too. Put my scarf that I wore to work over the window, and then carrying the backpack and putting it in the fridge, and all of those pieces are ending up at work longer than you expected, and uncomfortable in a meeting. And it's a very unique experience that not everybody gets to go through. Would you say that was your hardest stretch? When we talk about the messy middle, would you say that that's been the messiest, or in terms of just like so many things that really were beyond your control?
Yes, 2020 was very challenging, both on a personal level of having a baby, but also we were not a good business to be in during the pandemic. Like, we sell shoes and bags, and when nobody's going anywhere, they don't need those products. So it was challenging here. It was also very challenging with our factory partners who, for example, especially in Mexico, they didn't have the same supports from their government for COVID. So what we were trying to do in terms of working with them and trying to help each other was very challenging to navigate. The stress of not having any revenue, all those pieces. And yet, like, when I take a giant step back and if I remove the stress piece, it was very interesting work. Like, business is always this giant puzzle, and you're always moving the puzzle pieces. And when I look back on it, I would never want to go back there. But we did come out of it a better business. It gave us a bit of space to think about who we are and what we want. And our team was so united. Like, our team offered to go down to a 0.8 to try to save as many jobs as possible. And it felt almost like those early days again, where you're all united around one thing that you're striving and working really hard to overcome. And so it's not all bad. Like, I think when I reflect back, I'm like, wow, there was some really magical things that came out of that time.
Oh, that's great. And the fact that you were you fully e-commerce at that time still, or had you opened your store?
We had opened our store. So at that time we had 2 stores.
Okay. Was your strong e-commerce background, did it still lend to some sustainability, or, like you say, because people were really living in athleisure wear and not leaving their house, but there was a surge in online shopping. Did it help support at some point, or was it like people just were not interested in new shoes and bags at that time?
We were definitely well positioned having strong e-commerce. We weren't trying to pivot and get our store online. We were up and ready to go. And we did have to adjust our product offering. So we had like slippers and cabin shoes. We did like a home line with like leather placemats and office accessories. And we found we had certain products that were still selling well, like some of our more casual pieces, and a really loyal customer base. Like I think in the beginning, customers decided which brands were important to them.
Agree.
And supported them, and ours showed up for us in a huge way. So I think between those things, we saw like our heel business collapse. It's never recovered. I'm not sure if it will. Like I think that's like a fashion thing, as we all went like, why are we wearing these once we spent 2 years in comfortable shoes? So there has been some like permanent changes that came from that, but it wasn't all bad. But our revenue did dip by 50% that first year. Like it was substantial.
It's funny you mentioned high heels. I had, in reviewing your story, I thought to myself, I went 2 years and barely wore heels, and I wore heels everywhere all the time. And it is very rare now for me to seek out a pair of high heels. I'm also older than I was, 6-10 years ago. So I don't know that my hips can handle the high heels like they used to. But I do think it is a fashion trend that COVID dictated, much like the rise of athleisure wear. I was like, where am I shopping? Where am I buying clothes to go to work? After the pandemic, it was all jumpsuits and cozy sweats, which lovely, but wasn't what I was looking for in terms of a day-to-day office outfit.
Yeah, with our heels, all of our heel height is kind of a max of 2.5 inches now. So lots of like kitten heels, day heels, and we are seeing those come back, but there's no desire for like a 3.5, 4 inch.
The early 2000s platform stiletto. No, okay. We do take questions from our community at AWE, and I have one here. It's anonymous. Paying yourself less than your staff, but needing them to scale. How do you actually hold that? How do you know that you are the driving force in an organization? You're trying to pay yourself, you're trying to pay your staff. How does it feel, or how do you navigate maybe not paying yourself as much as some of your staff members when you need them to push the organization forward?
I can only speak about this from my own experience. So in the beginning, Justine and I did not pay ourselves for the first couple of years, because we had this mentality of like, no, let's get the team around us that's going to help us grow and scale. And then when the business grows and we're doing so awesome, then we'll start paying ourselves. And if I could go back in time, I would have paid ourselves earlier. And I would have paid ourselves earlier because you're also taking on a lot of other financial responsibility. If you're taking on loans that you're personally guaranteeing, where's that money coming from?
Right.
If you don't pay yourself. I also think that you want the company to feel worth it to you. So I wish we had paid ourselves earlier, even if it was a small amount. And if some months we couldn't have paid ourselves, that we chose to not pay ourselves in those months, opposed to just not go without a salary.
Right.
Over the years, there have still been times where we don't pay ourselves. Like even as we've grown, on months that are tight, we'll make that decision. You know what? This month we're not taking a salary. So I think it's something that never fully goes away if you're, unless maybe you have a wildly successful company. But I think it's that constant balance between paying yourself, paying others, and then also time. So that's where I get to right now, is I would rather have a little bit more time and make less money and have someone on the team that can help me achieve that for the other parts of my life.
So you started this business when you and your sister were in your 20s. Talk about financing for a business, and like you say, you're getting a loan and you're putting a personal guarantee. What was that process like for you as young women entrepreneurs? Did you encounter difficulties in trying to finance the organization? Was there barriers there? Was there anything specific that really helped you overcome those barriers?
I think financing the business is a challenge at every stage. Okay. So in the beginning, we worked out a startup Edmonton. We were surrounded by tech companies that were all raising money. So we raised a little bit of money from angel investors, essentially. And that's what allowed us to hire that first team, get through the first couple of years. Then we started taking on some more conventional loans. So I think it would have been around that time that we had our first loan from AWE, and then eventually grew to the place where we didn't have to use just our personal credit cards, and actually a bank would look at us and provide some finance. And it's always been a mix of, and then we took on more debt during COVID, which to try to survive those years and cover the losses and all those things. So I think that it's always challenging, and our business is very working capital intensive. Right? Like we have to buy all the inventory in the summer when sales are slow for fall. So we are constantly
cash flow.
People always think, oh, what do you do? Thinking I have this fashion company and I spend my time designing shoes and traveling to factories. And I'm like, I'm in spreadsheets like 50% of the time.
Right.
Like I look at spreadsheets and I'm thinking about currency and market. Like that's what I do.
You're not jet setting to Milan and touching leather all day?
No, like not at all. I mean, other people on our team do that. But I think that understanding your finances inside and out is really important as an entrepreneur. I mean, we cash flow weekly.
Wow. And so you are an AWE alumni, I guess. Can you talk a little bit about that time in your business when AWE was able to support the business and what that meant for your business at that time?
I think the beauty initially with AWE is that they can do some financing that banks won't touch. Right? So that was in the beginning, the magic it was like, okay, we will give you this loan when the banks weren't interested. Then as we've grown, there have been multiple times with AWE that we have asked for, a pause on principal repayments while we were in a really tough time in business, or during COVID, when there was a special program that had a portion of the loan that was forgivable. AWE is reaching out to us saying, hey, we have these new tools available. Is this something that would interest you? So I think what's different about our relationship with AWE compared to like a more traditional bank is that it just feels a bit more personal.
Right.
And we pick up the phone and we call someone who's very close to being able to make the decision on our loan, whether it's, okay, can we draw back up? Because we've done that once or twice too. So we've almost paid this off. Can we draw back up? So there's just a lot more flexibility around it. And there was a time where that $150,000 was like a game changer in our business.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that has been the experience. And I think that's the experience that we're trying to provide, that it is a relationship and we are one phone call away, and that the person that you are talking to can make a decision, as opposed to, because sometimes you need that answer quite quickly. Not always can we give that answer quite quickly, but I think being able to be more nimble in our processes and knowing that, I guess to the banks, maybe $150,000 may be insignificant, but to a small entrepreneur, somebody who's in the early stages, it is, like you say, a game changer for them to be able to access these funds. Maybe it means being able to meet payroll or to buy that next installment of leather or whatever it is for your product. So as we look at your journey, we've talked about some of the difficult places. You now have stores in Edmonton, Calgary, and Toronto, some pretty big cities in the country. U.S. expansion, any plans to go there? And then what season are you in right now as a leader? Is the company continuing to build? Are you thinking, okay, we've got the wheels in motion, maybe I'll take a step back? Or are you still very much driving the train forward?
Poppy Barley right now, I mean, there's a lot of questions in there.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay, should we do the plug on it? Like, we have spent the last couple of years really trying to stabilize the business. After COVID, there came an insane amount of growth. It was like sprinting on a treadmill. And so we said, okay, let's calm the growth. Let's focus on driving profit and then get ready to layer that growth back on top of a really solid foundation. So this year we are back in growth mode. So our head's up and we're going, okay, how do we want to grow? Is it by adding another store? Do we want to look more into wholesaling or push our e-commerce business? So we're kind of evaluating all those different options right now. The US has actually taken a backseat from us. It's a very unpredictable environment right now. The tariffs are challenged. So our US business has actually retracted in the past year. In some cases, we have an incredible opportunity in the US because so many of our products are made in Mexico, which are currently not subject to tariffs. We are actually the most competitive we've ever been on a price standpoint in the US market. So we're trying to balance that with, then our product coming from Portugal and Spain has higher tariffs on it. So, but overall we've landed, there's still a lot of growth to achieve in Canada, and it feels like a more stable market to bet on at this moment than the US. In terms of personally, I feel exhausted by the last 6 years. Like, it was a very tiring time, and I am very excited to get back to growth. And I would like to have the company on a clear growth plan that would then lead to me going, okay, what's next for me? Right. But I think it needs to return to very strong growth.
Would you say stabilization is much more labor intensive than growth? Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yes, it's much less exciting.
Absolutely.
Instead of, and I think that's hard as an entrepreneur, you're just full of possibilities.
Right.
Growth is so exciting. And stabilization is can we find 1% there? Can we do this? You're examining and operating on every part of your business in a way that is exhausting, but also very eye-opening.
Right.
Right? Oh, wow, there was a lot of fat in there. And look what we did. And now based on that foundation, the confidence to go grow on top of that is very rewarding.
I would imagine the growth stage allows you to go back to early days feelings of what is possible as well, where in stabilization you're saying what's possible is not necessarily where we are focused right now. So it's heavier conversations, and like you say, not as exciting and not maybe as energy giving as it could be.
Yeah.
One of the reasons AWE wanted to have a podcast and to tell entrepreneurial stories is so that we are able to create the community and share the wisdom from those that have gone before, and really allow others to not have to beat down the same path maybe that you did. So for the women who are in their own messy middle right now and not knowing if they should push through or pivot, uncertain if that momentum or that excitement that they once had is going to come back, what advice would you give them, or what would you want them to hear?
Places that helped me the most was in the early days, there's a lot of advice coming at you, a lot of thoughts on how you should run your business, if your business is good, if it's a terrible idea. It's actually it's a period of intense criticism. And it was only when Justine and I got really clear on what our vision for the company was and our vision for our own lives that we could start to build something in both places that works for us. And so if I could go back and tell myself, or go back and tell these other women, I would say, take the time to understand what you want in your business and what you want in your life, and tune out all other noise from that. And we actually got to a point where we stopped wanting to meet with advisors or meet with investors for a period of time, because we really needed to be clear on what we needed it to be for ourselves.
Right. It was your business. You got to decide.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I did have one question that I never got to ask. You're a runner. Any chance you'll go into running shoes?
We will never go into running shoes. It's technically very different. So footwear is highly specialized. For example, a factory that makes heels usually doesn't make flats. So then if you apply that to running, it's you're asking for something completely different. So no, we will never go into
never
athletic
been the inkling,
shoes.
No.
No.
Something else we've been doing on the podcast is asking entrepreneurs to leave a question for the next entrepreneur. And one of those questions was, after it's all said and done, and whether you exit your business or you sell it or you're retired on a beach somewhere enjoying your life, what do you hope that people will say about you, your business, and how the impact that you made?
The legacy question. The thing that gives me the greatest joy is watching our factory partners expand, watching people that work at Poppy Barley or have worked at Poppy Barley go off and start their own business. And so I hope that in the end, there would be hundreds of people who say that their careers, their lives pivoted for the best because they worked alongside Poppy Barley.
You know, I can't imagine anything better that for a legacy. Thank you so much. It's been such a vulnerable conversation, and thank you for sharing all of those, you know, very deep emotional pieces with our listeners. There has been so many words of wisdom that I know many entrepreneurs are probably listening and thinking, I didn't know that I could feel that way, or that other people felt that way as well. So what is one question that you would love to ask or wish that I had asked you today that may allow us to provide a lesson or some insight for the next entrepreneur?
My question is, what did they do along the way to have fun and celebrate? And I think about that because I think entrepreneurs are hardwired to always be like, what's next? What are we doing? What are we moving on to? And it's something that I'm terrible at. I think that my team, I must drive them crazy. Like, we do exactly what we set out to do. And I'm not like, we accomplished that. I'm like, now imagine what we could do. And so I think that I miss the celebration and sometimes the fun along the way. And I would be so curious how other entrepreneurs weave more of that into their business.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to hopefully doing this again. Thank you so much. Alberta Women Entrepreneurs is where women find the confidence, capital, and community to grow their business. Whether you're just starting or scaling up, AWE is here to support you every step of the way.